Hi, welcome to CLACCA ULC. My name is Rev Comrade Rowley, and welcome back to Homegroup Bible Studies. I'd like to acknowledge that the land that we're holding this Homegroup Bible Studies on is of the Gadigal and the Wangal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to the elders, both past and present, and recognise sovereignties, treaty, and social justice has never been ceded. So, uh, home group Bible studies in CLACCA ULC, we do to address the sexuality and gender liberation hermeneutics of the Bible, and we look at behind the text, within the text, and in front of the text. Today, we're focusing primarily on Genesis 30, and this is the story. This primary story is focused on um, the dynamics of the relationship ship between Rachel and Jacob, and also it's more importantly it's focused on two issues in relation to addressing the issue of infertility, and it's also addressing the issue of um, striving for equality without doing it at the expense of others. So behind this text, it was written between in sometime between 8500 BCE and BCE or earlier. We do know that this particular text was primarily written by Moses. This particular the other factor that is important to note is that this story is primarily from the source J, with perhaps verse 40, and from the E source of primarily source E. Now, the first part of the story, and within the text, we chapters 31 to 8 focuses on Rachel's envy of Leah, which recalls Sarah's responses to Hagar's pregnancy and child, in which the partner bears the brunt of the spouse's anger over infertility. However, um, unlike Abraham and Jacob, Jacob angrily rebuffs the spouse and points to God's agency. See, however, Joseph's calmer response on, to the brothers is also noted in verse in chapters 50 to 19. The strategy, however, that Rachel adopts is Sarah's strategy of granting her a spouse of granting her spouse a surrogate partner to produce an heir. Yeah. That she may bear upon my knees is either a legal idiom or an actual ritual signifying that the baby will soon be Rachel's legal child. Rachel's naming speeches for Dan and Naphtali expresses Rachel's thanks to God, and also acknowledges the rivalry with Leah. In verses 30, 14 to 21, the rivalry between Rachel and Leah erupts into a direct confrontation between when Reuben discovers some mandrakes, a plant often thought to have an aphrodisiac and fertility properties. Rachel strikes a slightly comical bargain, Jacob's services, in exchange for the mandrakes and pays the price. And Jacob pays the price when Leah conceives yet again. God has heeded Leah and not the mandrakes. After the births of Issachar and Zebulon, with appropriate naming speeches, Leah bears a child and names them Dinah. Dinah, Leah's seventh and last child, figures prominently in chapters 34. The absence of a naming speech or a motive for the name is curious, perhaps indicating the lesser family status of the children, which precludes the ancestry of the tribe. In any case, in verses 30, 22 to 24, God remembered Rachel as God had remembered Noah and Abraham previously. God acts of remembering generally entails salvific actions. So God heeded Rachel and opened Rachel's womb, as God had previously done twice for Leah. Rachel's firstborn child, Joseph, is now Jacob's youngest child, but Joseph will be Jacob's favorite. Joseph receives two naming speeches, speeches that perhaps are links, has strong links with the transgender struggle to be recognized by a name and be called by our names. The first one is from the E source, and the second one is from the J source. And this expresses Rachel's thanks and relief and Rachel's prayer for another child, which will be fulfilled. But tragically, Rachel dies in childbirth. In verses 30, 25 to 43, Jacob gains wealth at Laban's expense. The conflict between Jacob and Laban takes a new turn as Laban, the trickster, in 29, 23 to 27, tries to trick Jacob again, but is themselves tricked. Jacob regains their status as a triumphant trickster, this time in wholly justified fashion. Jacob's acquisition of wealth is due to their own ingenuity and God's blessing, casting them as the appropriate heir to Abraham and Isaac. Jacob's ability to manipulate the multiplication of flocks also shows Jacob to be a master of fertility, as befits the parent of 12 tribes. The story is primarily from the J source, with perhaps verse 40 from the E source, and please note also that the E source in 31 10 to 12 gives a slightly different account of events. In verse 30, 25 to 28, send me away is a reference to Jacob's plea that indicates Jacob's service to Laban is not yet complete. Laban's greed is not sated, since Laban has learned by divination that the Lord has blessed Laban because of Jacob. Laban refuses to release Jacob, but relents somewhat by asking Jacob to name the terms. In verse 30, 30 to 36, Jacob desires to provide for their own household also, and also agrees to continue keeping Laban's flock on the condition that they will receive wages. That they will receive as wages the sheep and goats that are different. So, e.g., those who are spotted, freckled, or striped, and the black lambs. According to this arrangement, Laban, whose name means white, retains the white sheep and the black goats, which are the normal colors. But Laban cheats Jacob by removing all the discolored sheep and goats and black lambs to their child's care, so that Jacob has no flock and no wages. In 37 to 43, Jacob turns the tables on Laban by breeding different colored animals from Laban's flock using sympathetic magic. The animals that see discolored rods of wood while breeding will bear different colored offsprings. Moreover, Jacob only does this for the strong animals, while the weaker ones Jacob breeds normally. As a result, the feebler were Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. Thus, Jacob tricks Laban, who had tried once again to trick Laban, and acquires great wealth. In front of this text, there is an important, the important message for the queer community is this. 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 This transformation of sexual reassignment is the tangible expression, at last of female solidarity. Immediately after Dinah's birth, God remembered Rachel, and heeded Rachel's call to bear a child. And God opened their wound. Rachel receives and gives birth to Joseph. Rachel has found their place in the patriarchal economy, but it has come about not through exploitation of and vying with other women, but through mutual support and the subversion of the rigid gender norms of the patriarchy. Well, that's all for now for Home Group Bible Studies. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please tune in to CLACCA ULC Home Group Bible Studies every Sunday from 3 p.m. And all are welcome to participate wherever you are. We also have live stream weekly Sunday church, and all are welcome. Thank you much for joining us. God bless, and I will see you at 5 p.m. or if you can't make it for church, I will see you next week. God bless, and thank you very much. Bye for now.